I stood in the gleaming hangar of Skybridge Aviation, surrounded by 12 pristine aircraft that I had scheduled and maintained for 11 years. Brandon Walsh, the owner's 28-year-old son, glared at me while his girlfriend Madison smirked nearby. "For a decade, I managed every route in your dad's aviation business. Now you're letting me go because your girlfriend handles operations." My voice echoed off the metal walls. Brandon's jaw tightened. "Pack your desk today." Without hesitation, I slid my ID card across his palm. "You have 30 minutes before the entire fleet stops flying." Walking toward my office, memories flooded back of building Skybridge from a 3-plane operation into Arizona's premier charter service. The concrete floor beneath my feet had witnessed countless early mornings when I arrived before dawn to coordinate cross-country flights for corporate executives who trusted our reliability above all competitors. 11 years ago, I was a fresh business graduate named Angelita Martinez, eager to prove myself in the aviation industry. Walter Walsh's struggling company consisted of 3 aging Cessnas mounting debt from delayed maintenance and a scheduling system that existed only in his head. Clients frequently arrived to find their reserved aircraft still airborne from previous trips, creating chaos that threatened to destroy what little reputation the company maintained. My first week involved implementing a computerized booking system that prevented double scheduling disasters. I spent 60-hour weeks establishing partnerships with luxury hotels throughout the Southwest, creating maintenance schedules that prevented costly breakdowns, and developing safety protocols that exceeded Federal Aviation Administration requirements. The work consumed my personal life completely. I declined romantic relationships, missed family gatherings, and postponed dreams of homeownership to focus entirely on growing this business that Walter had built as a tribute to his late wife, Margaret. The transformation was remarkable. Within 3 years, Skybridge operated 9 aircraft, serving clients from Los Angeles to Dallas. By year 7, we had expanded into specialized medical transport and cargo services. The company that Walter had struggled to keep afloat became the regional leader in private aviation, earning safety awards and generating enough profit to support not just Walter's comfortable retirement, but also generous salaries for our dedicated staff. Recent changes had created an atmosphere of uncertainty throughout the facility. Walter's retirement 6 months earlier left his son Brandon in charge despite having 0 aviation experience and minimal interest in learning the industry. Brandon preferred managing from his downtown office, leaving day-to-day operations to me, while he focused on what he called big-picture strategy sessions that usually involved long lunches with potential investors. Madison Phillips arrived as Brandon's interior design consultant, ostensibly hired to update the customer lounge and office spaces. Her recommendations included expensive artwork, imported furniture, and color schemes that prioritized aesthetics over functionality. Gradually, she began inserting herself into operational discussions, offering opinions about route efficiency and client preferences, despite lacking any relevant background. While packing my personal belongings, I discovered a stack of printed emails hidden beneath old maintenance manuals in my desk drawer. The correspondence dated back 3 months, featuring detailed exchanges between Madison and executives at Aero Elite, our largest competitor. The messages contained confidential information about Skybridge's client lists, pricing strategies, and upcoming service expansions that only senior management should have known. Reading through the emails, my hands began trembling with rage. Madison had been systematically feeding our most sensitive business intelligence to competitors, discussing specific clients by name, and revealing our profit margins on various routes. One message particularly caught my attention, where Madison described our outdated management structure and promised to provide complete operational intelligence once she gained fuller access to company systems. The firing wasn't about efficiency improvements or Madison's supposed operational expertise. This was corporate espionage designed to eliminate the only person who might discover her betrayal. The recent loss of several major clients hadn't resulted from market fluctuations or competitor advantages. They had been stolen through deliberate sabotage orchestrated by the woman who now stood beside Brandon watching me pack my career into cardboard boxes. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tom Morrison, our head mechanic. She's been asking questions about maintenance schedules and safety inspection records. Something feels wrong. Tom had worked alongside Walter for 23 years, developing an instinct for trouble that had prevented numerous potential disasters. His concern validated my growing suspicions about Madison's true intentions. Photographing the incriminating emails with my phone, I realized the scope of betrayal extended far beyond my personal dismissal. Madison's access to sensitive information threatened the livelihoods of every employee who depended on Skybridge for their income. Tom, nearing retirement, couldn't afford to lose his pension. Sarah Chen, our customer service coordinator, was a single mother whose twins relied on the health insurance benefits I had negotiated for all staff members. Brandon appeared in my doorway, impatience evident in his posture. "You have 15 minutes left, Angelita. Security will escort you out if you're not finished." His tone carried the arrogance of someone who had never earned anything through personal effort, inheriting authority without understanding the responsibility that should accompany it. Brandon's aggressive demeanor intensified as he entered my office, Madison hovering behind him with barely concealed satisfaction. The contrast between his nervous energy and her calm confidence revealed who truly controlled this situation. Madison had orchestrated this confrontation carefully, positioning herself to witness my humiliation while maintaining plausible deniability about her role in my dismissal. "Hurry up with whatever you're doing," Brandon snapped, gesturing toward the boxes scattered across my desk. "Madison needs to start setting up her new workspace, and we can't have you disrupting the transition any longer than necessary." Through the glass partitions separating my office from the main work area, I watched longtime employees observing the drama with expressions ranging from confusion to outright anger. Tom Morrison stood near the maintenance bay entrance, his weathered face reflecting decades of loyalty to Walter's vision. Sarah Chen sat frozen at her customer service desk, clutching the phone as if afraid to move. Miguel Rodriguez, our chief pilot coordinator, leaned against the flight planning station with his arms crossed, clearly struggling to contain his emotions. Tom approached my office door, speaking in the low tone he used when discussing sensitive mechanical issues. "Angelita, I need to tell you something important. Madison has been conducting interviews for key positions throughout the facility. She's already met with candidates to replace me, Sarah, and Miguel. None of them have relevant aviation experience, but they're all friends from her social circle." The revelation hit like turbulence at 30,000 feet. Madison wasn't content with stealing trade secrets and eliminating my position. She planned to dismantle the entire experienced workforce that had built Skybridge's reputation for excellence, replacing skilled professionals with unqualified acquaintances who would follow her directives without question. Sarah approached nervously, glancing over her shoulder to ensure Brandon couldn't overhear. "I found something you need to know about," she whispered, sliding a manila folder across my desk. "Madison left this in the copy machine yesterday. It contains financial documents showing the company credit cards are still linked to your personal guarantees from the early years when Walter needed your creditworthiness to secure equipment loans." Opening the folder, I discovered loan agreements totaling nearly $200,000 in equipment financing and facility bonds that remained tied to my personal credit. Walter had promised to remove these guarantees once the company established independent creditworthiness, but the paperwork had never been completed. If Brandon's mismanagement led to default on these obligations, my personal assets would be seized to cover the debts. Miguel joined our hushed conference, his voice tight with controlled fury. Madison announced that she's already contacted several clients about exciting changes in management structure. She's telling them that Skybridge will be modernizing operations and relocating headquarters to a downtown facility that better reflects our upscale clientele. The implications were staggering. Walter had deliberately chosen this hangar location for its proximity to the runway maintenance facilities and fuel services. Moving operations downtown would increase costs dramatically while reducing efficiency and safety. The decision reflected Madison's priority of appearance over substance, treating the aviation business like an interior design project, rather than a precision operation where mistakes could prove fatal. "There's more," Sarah continued, producing a small notebook from her pocket. "I found this in Madison's purse when she asked me to get her aspirin yesterday. It contains detailed plans to fire everyone over 40 years old, replace certified mechanics with general maintenance workers, and switch to lower-cost aircraft that don't meet our current safety standards." Reading through Madison's handwritten notes, I felt my blood pressure rising. Her plan involved convincing Brandon that modernization required eliminating expensive older employees and investing in cheaper equipment. She had calculated that reducing labor costs and aircraft quality would increase profit margins by 30%, money that would flow through inflated consulting fees to her newly established shell company. The notebook contained contact information for uncertified mechanics willing to work below industry standards, suppliers of refurbished aircraft with questionable maintenance histories, and insurance brokers who specialized in minimal coverage policies. Madison had researched every aspect of cutting corners while maintaining the appearance of legitimate operations. Most disturbing was her timeline for implementation. Within 60 days of my departure, she planned to terminate Tom's employment and replace him with a 24-year-old automotive mechanic who had expressed interest in learning about airplanes. Sarah would be eliminated in favor of Madison's former college roommate, who possessed no customer service experience but would work for half the salary. Miguel's position would be outsourced to a contract pilot service that employed less experienced aviators at reduced rates. Brandon returned to my office doorway, checking his watch with theatrical impatience. "Time's running short, Angelita. Madison has contractors coming this afternoon to begin renovations, and we can't have your personal belongings cluttering the workspace during their assessment." I realized that Madison's urgency stemmed from her desire to begin physical changes that would make my return impossible. Once contractors started demolishing the office configurations I had designed for operational efficiency, reversing her modifications would become prohibitively expensive. She was creating fait accompli situations that would lock Brandon into her vision regardless of any second thoughts he might develop. "Actually," Madison interjected sweetly, "I think Angelita should know about our other exciting changes. We're implementing a completely new organizational structure that prioritizes flexibility and innovation over outdated hierarchical management styles." Her corporate buzzwords poorly disguised the reality of her takeover plan. Sarah showed me the final page of Madison's notebook, which detailed her strategy for assuming complete operational control, while Brandon focused on external relationships and fundraising. Within 6 months, Madison intended to become the de facto CEO while maintaining the fiction that Brandon remained in charge. The scope of betrayal was breathtaking. Madison had identified every weakness in our organizational structure, every personal loyalty, and every financial vulnerability. She understood that eliminating me was merely the first step in a comprehensive plan to extract maximum value from Walter's life work before discarding the remnants. Excusing myself to use the restroom, I actually slipped into the adjacent storage room to call Walter at his retirement home in Sedona. The conversation that followed would change everything, revealing secrets that Madison could never have anticipated, and setting in motion a chain of events that would ultimately destroy her carefully constructed scheme. Walter answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the weariness that had become increasingly apparent during recent months. "Angelita, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Is everything all right at the facility?" My hands shook as I explained the morning's events, from my sudden termination to Madison's corporate espionage and planned demolition of everything we had built together. Walter listened in silence occasionally, asking for clarification about specific details, but mostly absorbing the magnitude of his son's betrayal. When I finished, the silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Walter spoke with a gravity I had never heard before. "There are things I need to tell you, Angelita. Things I should have shared months ago, but I kept hoping Brandon would find his way without intervention." Walter's confession began with the medical reality he had hidden from everyone except his doctors. Pancreatic cancer diagnosed 8 months earlier with a prognosis of 6 months remaining. The aggressive treatment he was receiving in Sedona had slowed the disease's progression, but his time was limited, and he knew it. "I didn't tell Brandon because I hoped he would mature into leadership naturally," Walter explained, his voice breaking slightly. "Margaret always said that real character emerges during times of trial, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to prove himself worthy of our legacy." The mention of Margaret Walter's wife, who died in a small plane crash 20 years earlier, brought tears to my eyes. The entire aviation company had been built as a tribute to her memory and their shared dream of making flying accessible and safe for ordinary people. Margaret had been the business visionary while Walter handled technical aspects, and her loss had nearly destroyed both him and the company. "Skybridge represents more than just a business to me," Walter continued. "Every aircraft we maintain, every safe flight we complete, every family we reunite honors Margaret's belief that aviation should serve humanity rather than just wealthy elites. What you're describing suggests that Brandon has forgotten these fundamental values." Walter revealed that his will contained provisions I had never suspected. Recognizing my dedication and expertise, he had planned to leave 40% ownership of Skybridge to me, with Brandon receiving 60% contingent on maintaining specific operational standards and employment practices. The arrangement was designed to ensure continuity of the company's mission while providing financial security for my retirement. However, Walter's voice grew more serious. Recent legal developments have complicated these arrangements. Brandon's marriage to Madison last month changes the inheritance structure significantly. I wasn't even invited to the wedding, Angelita. They flew to Las Vegas and exchanged vows without informing me, which suggests they had reasons for secrecy. The revelation that Brandon and Madison were married sent shockwaves through my understanding of the situation. Their legal union gave Madison potential claims on any assets Brandon inherited, creating additional motivation for her systematic destruction of company value. If she could demonstrate that Skybridge was failing under current management, she might argue for liquidating assets and dividing proceeds rather than continuing operations. While we spoke, I could hear commotion from the main hangar area. Through the storage room window, I watched Madison directing a team of people with cameras and measuring equipment, photographing proprietary maintenance logs and client databases that should have remained confidential. Her systematic documentation suggested preparation for legal proceedings or evidence gathering for competitors. Walter's breathing became labored as he continued explaining the legal complexities. "My attorney has been holding signed documents that would transfer 40% ownership to you immediately if Brandon violates specific operational and ethical clauses. Madison's current activities constitute multiple violations, meaning you could legally claim controlling interest in the company." The magnitude of this revelation was overwhelming. While Brandon believed he held complete authority over Skybridge, His actions had actually triggered legal mechanisms that transferred real power to me. However, the irony was bitter since Walter was dying and might never have the opportunity to explain these arrangements to his son.
There's something else.
Walter's voice grew weaker. I've been investigating unusual financial activity in the company accounts. Large transfers to consulting firms and equipment suppliers I don't recognize. The amounts suggest someone has been systematically draining resources while disguising the theft as legitimate business expenses. I thought about the loan guarantees still tied to my personal credit and the evidence of Madison's shell company receiving inflated consulting payments. Walter's investigation had apparently uncovered the financial dimension of her scheme, but his illness had prevented him from taking action to stop it.
Angelita, I need you to understand something crucial.
Walter's tone became urgent. Margaret and I built this company to provide good jobs for hardworking people while maintaining the highest safety standards in the industry. We never prioritized profit over people's welfare, and we never compromised integrity for short-term gains. If Brandon has forgotten these principles, then he's not worthy of carrying our legacy forward. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of sirens in the distance growing steadily louder. Walter's voice became strained as he described sudden chest pains and difficulty breathing.
I think I need to call for medical assistance, he gasped. But first, I want you to know that Harold Steinberg, my attorney in Phoenix, has all the documentation you'll need. Contact him immediately and tell him I authorized you to review the conditional ownership transfer documents.
Before I could respond, the line went dead. My attempts to call back went straight to voicemail, suggesting Walter had collapsed and was unable to answer. The timing seemed impossibly cruel, with Walter facing a medical emergency just as his life's work was being systematically destroyed by his son's wife. Returning to the main hangar, I found Tom Morrison approaching with obvious concern. Madison's people have been photographing everything, including the maintenance logs that contain sensitive information about our client's aircraft modifications and security requirements. This seems like preparation for some kind of legal action. Sarah appeared beside him, clutching a stack of papers. I've been monitoring the phone calls she's been making from Brandon's office. She's been speaking with Aero Elite executives confirming delivery of what she called complete operational intelligence. She also mentioned something about triggering violations that would force a sale. Miguel joined our impromptu conference, his pilot's training evident in his systematic approach to problem solving. I've been observing her documentation process, and it's not random. She's specifically targeting information that would be valuable to competitors, while also photographing anything that could be used to demonstrate safety violations or operational irregularities. The realization struck like lightning. Madison hadn't just been stealing information to help competitors. She had been systematically creating evidence to destroy Skybridge's reputation and force a distressed sale to Aero Elite at below-market prices. Her marriage to Brandon positioned her to influence any sale decisions, while her corporate espionage ensured that buyers would have complete intelligence about the company's operations. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Harold Steinberg, Walter's attorney, was calling from Sky Harbor Medical Center with devastating news. Walter had suffered a massive heart attack and was being rushed into emergency surgery. The prognosis was uncertain, but his condition was critical.
Mr. Walsh asked me to contact you immediately, Harold explained. He wants you to know that the conditional ownership transfer documents are in effect as of today based on documented violations of the Operational Standards Clause. However, given his current condition, you need to be prepared for the possibility that he may not survive to explain these arrangements to his son. As I absorbed this information, Brandon appeared in the storage room doorway with obvious irritation.
What are you doing in here, Angelita? Your 30 minutes expired 10 minutes ago, and security is waiting to escort you from the premises. Looking at his face, I realized that Brandon had no idea his father was fighting for his life in a Phoenix emergency room. He remained oblivious to the cancer diagnosis, the conditional ownership provisions, and the legal mechanisms that had just transferred control of his family's company to the woman he was attempting to fire. The next few hours would test everyone's character in ways none of us could have anticipated, as Walter's life hung in the balance, and the future of Skybridge Aviation depended on decisions that would honor or betray 20 years of careful planning and sacrifice. I raced through Phoenix traffic toward Sky Harbor Medical Center, my mind spinning between grief for Walter and rage at the chaos Madison was orchestrating back at the hangar. The irony wasn't lost on me that while Brandon was celebrating his authority to fire me legal documents, were already transferring actual control of the company to my name. The hospital's sterile corridors felt endless as I navigated toward the cardiac intensive care unit. Walter lay connected to multiple machines, his normally robust appearance reduced to that of a frail 74-year-old man fighting for each breath. When he saw me enter, his eyes brightened with recognition and relief. "Angelita," he whispered, reaching for my hand with surprising strength. "I'm glad you're here. There are things I need to say while I still can." His final words focused on protecting the legacy he and Margaret had built together. "Don't let them destroy what we created," he urged. "The people who work for Skybridge aren't just employees. They're family, and family takes care of each other. Promise me you'll remember that when you're making decisions about the company's future." Walter's death 20 minutes later was peaceful but devastating. The man who had given me the opportunity to build a career and create something meaningful was gone, leaving behind a son who had never appreciated his father's wisdom, and a daughter-in-law who saw only profit potential in 20 years of careful work. Brandon arrived at the hospital 30 minutes after his father passed away, completely unaware of Walter's illness and shocked to find me holding vigil beside the hospital bed. His immediate reaction was confusion rather than grief, struggling to understand why I was present for his father's final moments when he wasn't. "Why didn't anyone tell me he was sick?" Brandon demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm his son. I should have been here instead of dealing with business problems." The guilt in his voice was genuine, and for a moment I felt sympathy for this man who had lost his father without the opportunity to reconcile their relationship. However, any compassion was tempered by awareness that Madison was probably using his absence to continue her systematic destruction of everything Walter had built. Harold Steinberg arrived within the hour carrying a leather briefcase that contained documents capable of reshaping everyone's understanding of Skybridge's ownership structure. As Walter's attorney for 30 years, Harold had witnessed the company's evolution from struggling startup to regional aviation leader, and he understood the emotional significance of the legal arrangements Walter had created. "Before we discuss your father's will," Harold addressed Brandon with professional sympathy, "I need to inform you about ownership transfer provisions that became effective today based on documented violations of operational standards specified in the corporate charter." The explanation that followed left Brandon speechless. Due to evidence of corporate espionage, financial irregularities, and safety protocol violations, controlling interest in Skybridge Aviation had transferred to me effective immediately. Brandon retained minority ownership, but decision-making authority now rested with the person he had attempted to fire that morning. Madison's arrival at the attorney meeting revealed the calculated nature of her character. Rather than offering condolences for her father-in-law's death, she immediately focused on challenging the ownership transfer and protecting her financial interests. Her purse contained a digital recorder and a folder of documents that Harold quickly identified as falsified financial records. These documents suggest that Angelita embezzled company funds through personal credit guarantees, Madison announced with theatrical confidence. "I've also contacted Channel 7 News about investigating corporate corruption at a prominent aviation company. The public deserves to know when elderly business owners are manipulated into changing their wills." Her prepared accusations revealed the depth of planning behind her scheme. Madison had anticipated the possibility of legal challenges to her takeover and had created false evidence to support claims of financial misconduct. The edited audio recordings she produced contained carefully selected excerpts from conversations with staff members designed to suggest I had manipulated Walter's decisions through undue influence. However, Madison's confidence crumbled when Harold produced security footage from Walter's home surveillance system. The video clearly showed her searching through his personal files 2 weeks earlier, photographing will provisions and legal documents without his knowledge or permission. Her systematic theft of confidential legal information demonstrated premeditation rather than spontaneous concern about corporate governance. This footage also reveals that Mrs. Walsh knew about the conditional ownership transfer provisions and deliberately triggered the violations that would activate them, Harold explained. Her ultimate goal appears to have been manipulating Brandon into challenging the will so she could negotiate a settlement that would split any proceeds with her through their marriage. The most damaging revelation came from additional surveillance footage showing Madison's meetings with Aero Elite executives in hotel conference rooms and restaurant parking lots. The recordings captured her providing detailed information about Skybridge operations while discussing finder's fees she would receive for facilitating a distressed sale to her co-conspirators. Brandon's reaction to seeing his wife's betrayal was heartbreaking to witness. The grief of losing his father combined with shock at discovering Madison's systematic manipulation of their marriage left him struggling to process the magnitude of deception he had been living with for months. "You used me," he said to Madison with dawning comprehension. "Everything about our relationship was calculated to give you access to the business. You never cared about me or my father's legacy." Madison's mask finally slipped completely as she realized her scheme had been exposed. "Your father was a sentimental old fool who wasted profit potential on employee benefits and safety equipment," she snarled. "This company could have been worth millions more if it had been managed by someone who understood modern business principles instead of outdated loyalty nonsense." Her contempt for Walter's values revealed the fundamental incompatibility between her worldview and everything Skybridge represented. Where Walter saw employees as extended family deserving protection and support, Madison saw only labor costs to be minimized. Where Walter prioritized safety above profit margins, Madison calculated acceptable risk levels based on insurance coverage and liability limits. The meeting concluded with Madison storming out while threatening lawsuits and media exposure. Her departure left Brandon face to face with me, the woman now legally controlling his father's life work, struggling to understand how his attempt to assert authority had resulted in complete loss of power. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As Madison gathered her belongings from Harold's conference table, a pregnancy test fell from her purse showing positive results dated 3 weeks earlier. Her pregnancy had been hidden throughout the business takeover, representing another layer of manipulation designed to complicate any legal challenges to her position. The implications were staggering. Madison hadn't just married Brandon for access to Skybridge's assets. She had planned to use motherhood as leverage for emotional and financial claims against the estate, while simultaneously working to destroy the company's value through corporate sabotage and espionage. As I sat in that attorney's office holding legal documents that gave me control over a business worth millions of dollars, I realized that the next few months would test my ability to honor Walter's legacy while protecting the employees who had remained loyal throughout this ordeal. Madison's schemes had failed, but the damage she had inflicted would require careful planning and strategic thinking to repair. The woman who had walked into Skybridge's hangar that morning expecting to be fired was now responsible for preserving 20 years of hard work and ensuring that Walter and Margaret's dream of ethical aviation services would survive into the next generation. 3 days after Walter's funeral, I stood in the CEO office that I had never wanted, but now controlled by legal necessity. The irony wasn't lost on me that Madison's scheme to eliminate my influence had actually positioned me to prevent her systematic destruction of everything Walter had built. The transition period required immediate action to protect company assets and client relationships. My first priority was implementing emergency protocols that would prevent further information leaks while reassuring customers that Skybridge remained committed to the service excellence they had come to expect. Tom Morrison, Sarah Chen, and Miguel Rodriguez gathered in my office for our first official staff meeting since the ownership transfer. The loyalty they had demonstrated during the crisis earned them immediate promotions with increased responsibilities and salaries that reflected their value to the organization. "I'm promoting you to Director of Maintenance Operations with authority to hire additional certified mechanics," I announced. "Your experience and integrity make you the obvious choice to oversee our expansion into specialized aircraft services." Tom's weathered face showed emotion as he accepted the position Walter had always promised him but never formally offered. At 62 years old, with a granddaughter starting college next year, the promotion provided financial security and professional recognition he had earned through decades of excellence. Sarah's advancement to operations manager came with responsibility for customer relations and employee development programs. Her natural empathy and organizational skills made her perfect for building the supportive work environment that would become Skybridge's competitive advantage. Miguel's promotion to chief pilot included oversight of safety training and route development, utilizing his military experience to maintain the rigorous standards that had made Skybridge's safety record the envy of the industry. The client damage control required personal attention to every major account, explaining the leadership transition while recommitting to service excellence that had made Skybridge their preferred aviation provider. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with several clients expressing relief that I would be continuing my involvement in their flight planning and coordination. However, Madison's sabotage had created financial complications that required forensic accounting expertise to unravel. I hired Jennifer Walsh, a certified fraud examiner specializing in corporate embezzlement cases, to trace all questionable transfers and prepare evidence for potential criminal charges. Jennifer's preliminary findings were more extensive than anticipated. Madison's shell company had received over $600,000 through inflated consulting fees, equipment purchases that were never delivered, and service contracts for work that was never performed. The theft had been sophisticated and systematic, designed to appear legitimate while gradually draining resources that should have been reinvested in aircraft maintenance and employee benefits. Meanwhile, Brandon struggled with grief over his father's death, complicated by anger about inheritance decisions he couldn't understand. Madison's family attorney was pressuring him to contest the will and claim emotional distress damages, arguing that his father's conditional ownership transfer violated Brandon's rights as the biological heir. Madison herself had escalated her attacks on multiple fronts. Her complaint to the Federal Aviation Administration alleged that I lacked proper certification for executive responsibilities, hoping to trigger an investigation that would force my removal from operational oversight. She also contacted aviation insurance companies, suggesting that Skybridge under new management represented increased risk, attempting to drive up our coverage costs or eliminate coverage entirely. Her most dangerous move involved organizing former clients to demand refunds and claim service failures. These were mostly accounts that her information leaking had driven to competitors, but she convinced them to file complaints alleging safety violations and breach of contract. The coordinated nature of these complaints suggested preparation for a class action lawsuit designed to force Skybridge into bankruptcy. The aviation community's response provided unexpected support during this crisis period. Competitors who had lost business to Madison's intelligence gathering came forward with evidence of her corporate espionage activities. Pilots from other companies offered referrals and endorsements impressed by Skybridge's safety record and ethical business practices under my management. The most significant support came from aircraft manufacturers and maintenance suppliers who had worked with Walter for decades. Their testimonials about Skybridge's integrity and technical expertise provided powerful counter-evidence to Madison's claims about operational deficiencies. However, the situation became more complex when Madison revealed her pregnancy during a heated confrontation at Harold's law office. Her announcement that she was carrying Brandon's child represented another calculated manipulation designed to complicate any legal proceedings against her. "I think Angelita should do the right thing and transfer ownership back to Brandon for the sake of his unborn child," Madison declared with theatrical emotion. "A family business should stay in the family, especially when there's a new generation to consider." Her performance might have been convincing, except for evidence Jennifer had discovered showing Madison's consultation with divorce attorneys throughout her pregnancy. Court documents revealed that she had been documenting Brandon's emotional instability following his father's death, building a case for substantial alimony and child support payments that would continue for 18 years. Madison's plan extended beyond corporate theft to personal exploitation of Brandon's grief and guilt about his relationship with Walter. She intended to use their child as leverage for ongoing financial claims, while simultaneously working to destroy the business that would fund those obligations. The scope of her manipulation was breathtaking in its callousness. Madison had identified every emotional vulnerability and financial weakness in the Walsh family structure, crafting a comprehensive strategy to extract maximum value before discarding the remnants of relationships she had systematically corrupted. As I prepared for the legal battles ahead, I realized that protecting Skybridge required more than just defending against false accusations. Madison's scheme had revealed fundamental weaknesses in corporate governance and family business succession planning that needed to be addressed to prevent future exploitation. The company Walter and Margaret had built deserved leadership that would honor their values while adapting to contemporary business challenges. My responsibility was ensuring that their legacy of ethical aviation services would survive and thrive regardless of the obstacles Madison continued to create. The anonymous tip I received that evening about Madison's ongoing meetings with Aero Elite executives provided the final piece of evidence needed to pursue criminal charges for corporate espionage and conspiracy to commit fraud. The battle for Skybridge's future was entering its decisive phase. The private investigator I hired to document Madison's continued corporate espionage activities provided surveillance footage that exceeded my expectations for both detail and damaging content. The recordings captured not only her meetings with Aero Elite executives, but also conversations revealing the full scope of her conspiracy to destroy Skybridge's market position. Detective Ray Sullivan, a former military intelligence officer who specialized in corporate fraud cases, had positioned cameras and audio equipment to record Madison's final meetings with her co-conspirators. The evidence he gathered would prove decisive in both criminal and civil proceedings against her. The surveillance showed Madison providing Aero Elite with detailed client lists, maintenance schedules, and pricing information that her competitors used to underbid Skybridge on several major contracts. More damaging was audio of Madison discussing specific sabotage activities designed to create safety violations that would trigger federal investigation and possible shutdown of our operations. Jennifer Walsh's forensic accounting investigation had traced Madison's financial fraud through multiple shell companies and offshore accounts. The complexity of her money laundering operation suggested professional assistance from individuals experienced in corporate theft and tax evasion. total losses exceeded $800,000 when opportunity costs and diverted business were included in the calculation. However, the most shocking discovery came from medical records that Jennifer obtained through legitimate subpoena power. Madison had known about her pregnancy before Walter's death, but concealed it to avoid complications during the business takeover. Her calculated timing revealed that even motherhood was simply another tool for manipulation rather than a genuine family milestone. Brandon's awakening to the extent of his wife's betrayal began when I presented him with evidence of her identity fraud. The woman he had married as Madison Phillips was actually Michelle Patterson, a former interior designer from California who had changed her name after a previous marriage ended in financial scandal involving theft from elderly clients. "She told me about her first marriage," Brandon said quietly, reviewing the investigation results in my office. "But she claimed her ex-husband was abusive and controlling. She never mentioned that she was convicted of elder abuse and financial exploitation." The pattern of behavior was consistent across multiple relationships. Madison had targeted men with access to family wealth or business assets, using romantic manipulation to gain financial access before systematically draining resources and disappearing. Her marriage to Brandon represented the most ambitious attempt yet involving corporate espionage and conspiracy charges that carried potential federal prison sentences. Brandon's decision to cooperate with the investigation required considerable courage, given his emotional investment in their relationship. His discovery of Madison's real identity documents in their shared apartment provided crucial evidence about her systematic deception regarding education, employment history, and financial background. "I found boxes of materials she had collected about aviation businesses throughout the Southwest," Brandon explained, producing photographs of Madison's research files. "She had detailed information about company valuations, key personnel, and potential vulnerabilities at dozens of aviation companies. Skybridge wasn't her first target, just the most successful one." The investigation revealed that Madison had actually attempted similar schemes at 3 other aviation companies over the previous 5 years. In each case, she had identified businesses with aging founders and inexperienced successors infiltrating their operations through romantic relationships with family members or key employees. Her methodology was sophisticated and comprehensive. Madison researched target companies through public records and industry publications, identified personal vulnerabilities of decision-makers and crafted personas designed to appeal to specific individuals. The aviation industry's traditionally male-dominated culture made her approach particularly effective with lonely executives who were susceptible to attention from attractive younger women. However, Madison's plan for Skybridge included elements that went beyond simple theft. Her collaboration with Aero Elite involved creating safety violations that could have resulted in aircraft accidents and passenger deaths. The maintenance schedules she had been manipulating included critical safety inspections that prevented mechanical failures during flight operations. "She was willing to kill people to achieve her financial goals," Miguel observed during our security briefing. "The falsified inspection reports she created could have caused catastrophic mechanical failures that would have been blamed on pilot error or weather conditions." The moral implications of Madison's actions extended far beyond corporate fraud. Her willingness to compromise aviation safety for personal profit violated every ethical principle that governed the industry Walter and Margaret had devoted their lives to serving. Federal authorities arrived at Skybridge with warrants for Madison's arrest on charges including corporate espionage, wire fraud conspiracy, and endangering public safety. The investigation had expanded to include Aero Elite executives who had participated in the conspiracy to acquire confidential business information through illegal means. Brandon's decision to provide evidence against his wife represented a turning point in his character development. Despite the personal cost of acknowledging his marriage was built on systematic deception, he chose to honor his father's legacy and protect the employees who depended on Skybridge for their livelihoods. "My father always said that real character emerges during times of crisis," Brandon told me as federal agents prepared to execute arrest warrants. "I failed that test when I let Madison manipulate me into firing you, but I want to do the right thing now, even if it's too late to earn his forgiveness." The most dramatic moment came when federal agents attempted to arrest Madison at her downtown apartment, only to discover that she had fled during the night with approximately $300,000 in cash stolen from Skybridge accounts. Her escape to Canada represented the final confirmation of her criminal intent and complete lack of remorse for the damage she had inflicted. However, Madison's flight also provided closure for Brandon and the Skybridge employees who had questioned their own judgment during her manipulation campaign. Her refusal to face consequences confirmed that every suspicion about her character had been justified, validating the loyalty and integrity that had made Skybridge successful under Walter's leadership. The federal investigation expanded to include banking institutions and immigration authorities, ensuring that Madison's flight would only delay rather than prevent her eventual prosecution. Her pregnancy, which she had used as emotional leverage throughout the crisis, would not protect her from criminal responsibility for actions that had endangered both aviation safety and individual livelihoods. As law enforcement agencies coordinated their pursuit of Madison and her accomplices, I focused on rebuilding the company culture and operational excellence that had made Skybridge the regional leader in ethical aviation services. The crisis had tested everyone's character, but it had also revealed the strength of relationships built on mutual respect and shared commitment to Walter's values. 6 months after that confrontation in the hangar, I stood before an expanded Skybridge aviation facility that housed 18 pristine aircraft and employed 43 dedicated professionals. The morning sun reflected off polished aluminum surfaces, creating the same sense of possibility that had inspired Walter and Margaret to build this company as a tribute to aviation's power to connect families and communities. Madison's capture at the Canadian border had provided the closure our entire organization needed to move forward with confidence and purpose. Federal agents intercepted her attempting to flee with over $300,000 in stolen funds, along with detailed plans for establishing a new identity and continuing similar schemes in other countries. The trial that followed revealed the full extent of Madison's criminal enterprise. Testimony from multiple victims demonstrated a pattern of financial manipulation dating back nearly a decade, involving elderly businessmen and vulnerable family members across 3 states. Her conviction on charges including corporate espionage, wire fraud conspiracy, and endangering public safety resulted in an 8-year federal prison sentence with full restitution requirements. The Aero Elite executives who had participated in her corporate espionage scheme faced their own legal consequences, including suspension of operating certificates and substantial civil penalties. The industry-wide investigation that resulted from Madison's activities led to enhanced security protocols for protecting confidential business information throughout the aviation sector. Brandon's transformation during the crisis had been remarkable to witness. Confronting the reality of Madison's manipulation forced him to examine his own values and priorities in ways that his father's gentle guidance had never achieved. He voluntarily entered therapy to address the psychological trauma of discovering that his marriage was built on systematic deception, demonstrating genuine commitment to personal growth that Walter would have admired. His decision to begin working at Skybridge in an entry-level maintenance position, learning the business from the ground up under Tom Morrison's patient instruction, represented a complete reversal of his previous attitude toward manual labor and technical expertise. The humility he displayed while earning the respect of employees he had once dismissed showed character development that honored his father's memory.
"I spent years thinking I was too good for the work that actually makes this business successful," Brandon admitted during our quarterly review meeting. "Watching Tom diagnose engine problems and Miguel plan complex flight routes has taught me more about leadership than any business school could have provided."
His progress toward earning a private pilot license symbolized his commitment to understanding every aspect of the industry his family had served for 2 decades. The discipline required for flight training complemented the emotional work he was doing in therapy, creating a foundation for the mature leadership Walter had always hoped his son would develop. The business success we achieved during this rebuilding period vindicated Walter's belief that ethical practices and employee welfare were actually competitive advantages rather than costly luxuries. Under my leadership, Skybridge became the regional industry leader with safety awards, an expanded service territory that attracted clients seeking reliability and integrity. Our innovative employee profit-sharing program, funded partially by recovered stolen assets, created financial incentives for the long-term thinking that had always distinguished Skybridge from competitors focused on quarterly earnings. Tom Morrison's apprenticeship program for young mechanics honored Walter's commitment to developing skilled craftspeople who would maintain aviation safety standards for the next generation. Sarah Chen's advancement to operations manager included completion of an aviation business degree through the education assistance program I established to support employee development. Her success story demonstrated how investing in people's potential created loyalty and expertise that benefited everyone involved in the organization. Miguel Rodriguez's promotion to chief pilot included responsibility for developing specialized medical transport services that utilized his military experience while addressing his post-traumatic stress through meaningful work helping others. His leadership of our emergency medical flights saved dozens of lives while providing him with the sense of purpose that traditional therapy had been unable to achieve. The scholarship fund we established in Walter and Margaret's memory provided aviation education opportunities for students who might not otherwise have access to flight training or technical certification programs. The first recipients included 2 young women who were inspired by seeing successful female leadership in an industry traditionally dominated by men. Skybridge's recognition as a model for ethical business practices in the regional aviation industry led to speaking opportunities at conferences and trade associations throughout the Southwest. Sharing our experience with corporate fraud prevention helped other family businesses identify and address vulnerabilities before they could be exploited by individuals like Madison. The safety protocols we implemented to prevent future sabotage attempts became industry standards adopted by aviation companies nationwide. Our comprehensive background checking and information security procedures protected both proprietary business intelligence and critical safety documentation from unauthorized access. The community impact of our growth extended beyond aviation services to include partnerships with local technical colleges and veteran support organizations. Our facility became a training center for aircraft maintenance certification programs that provided career opportunities for young people interested in aviation careers. The legal ownership structure that emerged from the crisis provided security for both Brandon's inheritance rights and my operational authority. The revised partnership agreement ensured continuity of Walter's values while recognizing the contributions that had built Skybridge's reputation for excellence. Most importantly, the company culture we rebuilt emphasized family relationships among employees who genuinely cared about each other's welfare and professional success. The loyalty that had protected Skybridge during the crisis became the foundation for sustainable growth based on mutual respect and shared commitment to aviation safety. Looking back on that morning when Madison demanded my termination, I realized that being fired had actually liberated me from a toxic situation that was gradually destroying everything Walter had worked to create. The legal mechanisms that Walter had established to protect his legacy operated exactly as intended, transferring control to someone committed to preserving his values rather than exploiting them for personal gain. The experience taught me that true leadership means protecting those who trust you even when the personal cost seems overwhelming. Walter's example of building success through integrity and employee development proved more powerful than Madison's schemes based on manipulation and betrayal. As I watched our newest employee, a young woman fresh from aviation maintenance school, conduct her first safety inspection under Tom's patient guidance, I felt confident that Skybridge would continue honoring Walter and Margaret's memory while adapting to serve future generations of travelers who deserved safe, reliable aviation services. The woman who had entered that hangar expecting to be fired had discovered her true calling as a leader capable of building something greater than personal ambition or financial gain. Sometimes the most devastating setbacks become opportunities for growth that would never have been possible under more comfortable circumstances. Have you ever experienced a situation where being betrayed actually led to discovering your true strength and purpose? The people who try to tear us down often reveal capabilities we didn't know we possessed, and sometimes losing everything we thought we wanted gives us the chance to build something far more meaningful. I'd love to hear your thoughts about overcoming betrayal and finding unexpected opportunities in difficult situations. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if you can't immediately prove your suspicions. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges, and share it with anyone who might be facing similar situations. Your support means everything as we continue building a community of people who believe in integrity and standing up for what's right. I wish you courage in your own journey and the wisdom to recognize when difficult circumstances are actually pointing you toward your true purpose in life.